Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Sankara Hub Talks. I'm one of the hosts, Rohan Sankara, and today we're launching a new series called People of Impact, which is centered around featuring guests who have had an effect on people around them or impact. And these individuals are inspiring others to make great and significant changes for the betterment of our communities. So today we also have Raga Kodali, who will be our co-host for the Hub Talks going forward. So welcome, Raga. It's good to have you on board.
Everyone, my name is Raga Kadali, and I am very excited to be co-hosting the Hub Talks with Rohan from now on. Our guest today is a very close and dear uncle of mine, Sridhar Vasireddy. He immigrated to the United States from India and completed his master's at Fuqua School of Business at Duke. He is an entrepreneur, a family man, and above all, a philanthropist. And today, we would like to interview him about some of his experiences in both the business and philanthropy worlds. Hopefully, his inputs will provide some valuable insight for high school students about their own futures. Thank you so much for taking the time to provide your insights today.
Thank you, Raga and Rohan, and Mrs. Sunkara for having me. I'm very excited to share my knowledge and see however I can help you guys.
Okay, so again, it's great to have you here. So welcome again. So I'd like to start by talking about your entrepreneurial venture, REAN, which you built up and sold to Hitachi, I believe. So can you provide some insight into how the idea was initially conceived and what your vision was in creating it?
Yeah, so one of the most important lesson I learned in my MBA is the effect that productivity will have in wealth creation. And just as a part of me sharing this with you, one takeaway for the kids is no matter what circumstances you face in life, and if you ever feel like, like the pie is being sliced. So when you talk about job losses and whatever, right? Reality is there are some jobs that will be lost as a part of technology being introduced, and there are new jobs that will be created, right? So having a mindset of growing the pie, creating the wealth by applying technology to improve productivity is a very, very important lesson for any entrepreneur, right? So when I was at Amazon, what I saw, and 10, 15 years before this cloud movement, the internet and web movement, right? That happened as we were just graduating from our graduate programs. And at that time, you won't believe it, we were paid about $100 to $150 an hour to create web pages, right? Which, if you think of it, is ridiculous right now, because any high school kid, any elementary school kid can create a web page as long as they know what to do, right? They can get on pick a tool, design a page, and that so-called HTML, the backend code, is auto-generated. So I thought, when I looked at the demand that adoption of cloud created, right, which there's a new job profile, the so-called DevOps engineer jobs were created because of the introduction of cloud. Mostly, I mean, it's not just for cloud, but the concept of what is known as infrastructure as code that the cloud introduced. But when I looked at what infrastructure as code is, right, it is not logic. It is not like Java, Python, like what you would normally write business logic. It's not like that. It's more like HTML. It's a manifest that describes what you want to see as an outcome. Right. So the thought process is, if you know, just like I thought, just like how, the web HTML programmer jobs went from $150 an hour to almost zero value, because machine will, if a machine can generate that code, right, it creates a lot of value. So I fundamentally believed in that concept, and I thought that we could create what is today known as low code, no code platforms. I don't know if you know what that means. Is basically, instead of programming whatever you would normally write as code, the code is auto generated for you, right? That's also another important message for you to remember, especially the kids growing up now. I see a lot of kids going after Python or JavaScript. I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do. You should do it, but remember that by the time you guys come to a professional life, most likely you will not be coding. You will only be training machines. Just like how you're, right? Even for business logic, you will be training machines. You won't, today you're doing machine learning and training for detecting an object or some low end stuff. But in 10 years from now, when you're in your professional life, it's very highly likely that there will be no code platforms, and it's already a trend that is starting, right? But anyway, going back to your question, so that was the premise. I felt like there was a room for disruption where we could auto generate the code that is needed to adopt cloud, and that was the premise under which we started the company. And I would say that it was a very difficult journey to come up with a disruptive idea like that. But the feather on the hat and towards the end is a nearly $1 billion contract, $950 million to be precise, that we won from the U.S. Department of Defense. That it was primarily because we created a platform that was our uniqueness compared to anybody else in the space.
Thank you so much. So it is common knowledge that being an entrepreneur and creating your own business, such as REAN Cloud, can be associated with great risks and challenges. So I just wanted to ask, when starting REAN Cloud, what were some of the hardships and setbacks you faced, and how did you respond to these?
Well, I mean, there is no gain without pain, right? So that's a fundamental truth. I mean, it is it's really what kind of pain and suffering that you want to put yourself through for that gain and joy is a decision that you need to fundamentally make, right? So and trust me, there is really good, worthy pain and suffering that gives a lot of joy, right? So and I think we should not focus. So a very, very good example is a mother giving birth to a child. That's a very painful suffering, right? But it's immense joy, right? So obviously there'll be a lot of hardships, a lot of pain, but I think that's the part of joy. Well, I'll also tell you this: it doesn't mean like you have to question yourself, like, what are you achieving at the end of the day? So for me, it was like I knew that I would not be happy. Like, if towards the end of my life, if I look back and I didn't at least try, I knew that I would be unhappy. It didn't matter to me whether I would be successful as an entrepreneur or not, but I had to give it a try, right? But after the success too, if we look at the days where we won these large contracts, or the days where we know that we got large funding, or after we sold the company, those moments that we work hard for, they don't give, or the joy that they give, right? If somebody were to really put a measure on the happiness, right? compared to like when we're running like Asha Jyoti, or I see, you know, the satisfaction that we get when we are close to people, helping them in their dire needs, right? That satisfaction and happiness is a lot more than these big wins, right? So that's my personal experience. So I guess what I'm trying to communicate is, it doesn't mean that pain that you go through may give you the happiness. I mean, it's same level of happiness for everybody. So I think every individual needs to make their own choice in terms of whether it is worth it or not, because there's plenty you can do with a job. It'll give you enough happiness in life and enough money to live, right? So it's a balanced choice that you have to make.
Can I ask you a quick follow-up question? So, yeah, you mentioned a lot of hardships and some of the challenges there. And I was just wondering, did the fact that you were an immigrant, or just did your immigration moving to a new country also bring any challenges while starting your new venture?
No, not at all. In fact, I don't know, like my experience, I actually am so thankful for the opportunity that this country gave me. And I mean, it's I think if after Hitachi acquired the company, I pretty much traveled to every country in the world, right? It's not like I would have gone through the experience of starting a company in every company in the world, every country in the world. But or for that matter, if I compare what I have to go through to start a company in India, right, where I am from, um, the opportunities, the support system, everything that this company offers, that this country offers, that the US offers, is just unbelievable. I think the really many people coming as immigrants, and then just making a new life here. I completely believe that this is by far the best place for immigrants to come and start their businesses, or just start their life to be successful. I mean, all things considered. I mean, of course, every country will have certain, racism, social prejudices, or what they make available. But holistically, if you just weigh out the pros and cons, I think I believe US is by far ahead of many countries.
Okay, so sorry about that, but I guess we can move on to the next question that I had. Sorry about that again. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the perceptions around entrepreneurs. So when people think of entrepreneurs, they think of someone who's charismatic, maybe a strong leader with a vision, somebody who's highly achieving, among other things. But do you believe that these skills are innate in an entrepreneur, like they're born with it, or can they be learned, or is it a bit of both?
See, it's especially this, I'll just tell you something. Like when I was growing up, right, a lot of people tease me that I look like Shah Rukh Khan, right, but only in the dark. Okay, and same way, right? I mean, this charisma thing is very overrated, I think, to be entrepreneur in general, right? So just think of it like this, right? Let's say that you want to genuinely help people, and I'm not talking about charity to help, right? Any company exists to help their customers, right? You're solving some pain for your customers, right? So, I mean, how much do you think people will care, when you're helping? Do you really care whether the other side is charismatic when they are helping, right? I don't think anybody does. I mean, whether you're talking to employees and you really care about why they are there, or you care about creating a culture of learning or a culture of growth, right? When you're focused on what matters to your customer, whether you're a for-profit or a non-profit, when you're focused on what matters to your employees, right? I don't think charisma plays a big role, but it is also true that you will end up, irrespective of how you are, when people genuinely sense that you have such an attitude, they automatically will perceive you as being charismatic, right? So if how difficult is it to then be very customer centric or very employee centric if you genuinely choose to be so, right? And then you'll automatically be called charismatic at the end of that, right? So I do think that you can absolutely, like, don't focus on being charismatic, focus on doing good, right? And you will automatically, get all the charisma, right, as through your journey.
Okay, so following up on that, this is something I was wondering as well, and there might not even be a proper answer to this question, but I wanted to ask you if you were to list the top three traits that an entrepreneur should possess in order to be successful, what would they be? And or are there even like a certain three that they need to be successful, or is everybody just their own?
At least in my case, I do think that there's actually, in fact, after a lot of, different types of hardship that, that because when you're trying to, I guess some of these I just had innately, but I struggled a lot, whether that is a good thing or not. But, and then I later realized that that is a good thing. And I actually strongly believe that these are the skills that one needs to have to be successful in life, not just to be entrepreneur. And that is transparency and honesty, right? Those two things. So fundamentally, like, in an actionable way, what I would say is, say what you're going to do and do what you say, right? So if you were to practice this, so always tell people before you do something. What that does is, you're making yourself accountable because you said something, right? Also, if there are people around you that, and most of the time there will be people around you that care, right? So they will give you feedback before you do something. You might still, as an entrepreneur, you need to kind of have some conviction, right? It doesn't mean that you ignore other people, but you at least, keep that. So saying what you're going to do has a lot of value. A lot of people fear to say before they do. But one of the things I think you should do is, say before you do. And then the important thing is do what you say, right? So when you start doing what you say, first of all, be honest to yourself, right? If someone has already guided you and you still said, okay, fine, I'm still going to do it this way, right? Correct yourself, right? Don't be stubborn about it, right? So that level, so if you keep on practicing this, always be transparent, be honest. When you failed or when you should have listened to somebody, acknowledge that and then correct yourself. So people will appreciate that, right? People appreciate transparency and honesty. And like I said before, if you combine these two with a lot of empathy, and I also want to be very, very clear about sympathy and empathy, right? Um, Unfortunately, 80% of the world, I feel, is appreciates sympathy. They don't appreciate empathy so much. Well, a lot of people will say, be empathetic, right? So what I mean by that is just being transparent in your disagreement with somebody, right? And making them understand that you are saying that because you care for their good, you care for their, their growth. So in very simple terms, like I just say, let's say that somebody, somebody is just vomiting, right? So you can sit by the next to that person and say, "Oh, I still feel so bad for you," right? And you can hug them and blah blah, or you can go get a towel, get some water, make them feel better, right? That's the difference that I'm talking about, right? So sometimes when you are giving these hard messages, people don't appreciate that empathy, but that 20% that appreciate that empathy and stick with you, they will make a world of difference, right? So so just surround yourself with people that appreciate that same level of transparency, honesty, and empathy, and create a culture of that. And I think that will create, I mean, a successful entity. It doesn't matter. I mean, end of the day, you may not have made money, but you'll help enough people in the process, for profit or non-profit, right? And one book that really nailed this home for me is called The Principles. Okay, and the book is by Ray Dalio, and he is known to be like the Steve Jobs in the hedge fund market in financial instruments. Um, and the book is about life principles and work principles. So basically, you're being transparent about your principles. You can agree, disagree with people, but when you disagree with people on principles, right? Then it's not whether your principles are correct or their principles are correct. There's always a gray area. It's better to just agree to disagree and move on, right? Don't, when the principles are misaligned, don't try to work together. It won't work. Okay, so the tenets for me would be transparency, honesty, and empathy. Like those three would be the main things.
Thank you so much. Now with the questions, we would like to transition from more business-related questions to philanthropy. Mr. Vasireddy has recently established a foundation called the REAN Foundation. You can see it in his video screen in the top left. And the REAN Foundation is currently doing very noble work in India with the current devastating COVID-19 situation. So I wanted to ask, what exactly is the REAN Foundation? And can you also describe some of the work the organization is doing this summer in India?
Yeah, so actually just some backstory about how I got started with Rain Cloud, because it ties back to Rain Foundation, right? So, before in about 2006, 2007 timeframe, I was working for a think tank called the MITRE Corporation. So MITRE is a federal government think tank. In other words, they advise the federal government on healthcare issues, or how Centers for Medicare and Medicaid programs need to be run, or Department of Defense and so on. So I was in their healthcare business, and that was the time when the Office of National Coordinator was created to light up the US health system with health IT, to be able to have electronic records, health records for everybody, right? At about the same time, my mom was diagnosed with leukemia in India. And the experience we had there, right, where we had to take her from our town to the city. And then, we knew that the prognosis was 6 months, right? But we still, like any other family, we wanted to give it a try by going through one round of chemotherapy and take her back if it doesn't work. But, we kept on fighting for her life, right? When I came back, fortunately, Maida allowed me to spend time with her. When I came back, one thing that I was really unhappy about is she didn't want that treatment, right? And she wanted to spend those last days with her family and friends that that she spent majority of her life with, and she couldn't do that, right? Because she ended up living in the city, and because of cancer and chemo and all that, people couldn't visit her. It was just a very unhappy ending to that. So I thought, maybe with the knowledge I have, I can do something, right? At least fortunately in our situation, we could afford to keep her in the city, right? Also, there's because medicine has, there's nothing medicine can do at that point in life, right? So I found like the pharmacies would deliver medicines home. This was back in 2007. I'm not talking about the new digital world today where pharmacies will deliver medicines, right? In India, it was like that back then that I observed. Lab would come home, pick lab samples. I would take the records and give it to the doctor. She didn't have to visit the doctor every time. So I felt like with the knowledge I had with health IT, what if I created something that would help other individuals that cannot afford to go to cities, or even if they could afford to, the pain of going to cities in rickshaws and buses, it's just not worth it, not knowing whether your doctor sees you or not, right? So one weekend, I I started setting up, applying my knowledge, Googled something, and to my surprise, I was able to get a electronic health record system up and running in less than a day, and it cost me 60 cents. Okay. So back to the very first statement that I made. So one thing that immediately dawned on me is at the time, like internet, there was a very famous book called, Internet Flattened the World, right? Um, but I also, felt like whatever this new thing is, and that Amazon, back then it was not even called cloud yet, right? Whatever it is, I felt that it would create more wealth and maybe even tip the balance in the world, because fundamentally what internet did is democratized information, right? But you still have to have a lot of money. So you need to be a Goldman Sachs to crunch a lot of data, or you need to be a National Institute of Health to crunch a lot of data to do something meaningful, right? Now imagine if a common man has access to that compute power, right? So you can take that information, convert it into knowledge, and take action. So it was very clear to me back then that whatever that new thing is, it's going to make a big difference in the world. It was going to create more wealth than what internet created. But when I said that back then, nobody was ready to agree, especially not at MITRE, not in the government, because they didn't even see, they couldn't imagine, something like that being adopted, right? But when President Obama, became he introduced cloud first policy, and that led into Amazon starting their worldwide public sector. So it kind of paved my path, right? And throughout the journey, I left MITRE because I felt like, if I just stayed there, I would be writing more papers. I would not achieve my goal. So I thought if I went to Amazon, I would be closer to implementing something. But at Amazon also, I found myself just talking to customers, telling the same story, right? Then I said I have to leave Amazon and start my own company so I can have the freedom to do what I want to do. And then that company was also successful. But eventually, throughout the period, and like for example, even as a REAN Cloud, we continued to work with the American Heart Association. So and we created their first the precision medicine platform for personalized medicine, right? That American Heart uses even today to grant a lot of research grants to big hospitals and university systems, right? But this last 10 years or so, really made me more resourceful, more knowledgeable towards my goal. So one of the things that I want to say is, and at the time I was actually already working for another foundation, or I just co-founded another foundation called Asha Jyoti, right? And one thing that is very real in my experience is uh, Asha Jyoti taught me more than what MBA taught me, right? Because in order to motivate people to do something for free is a lot more difficult than motivating people to do something for pay, right? So, and leadership, you just have to, you can't go to a class and learn leadership. You have to live through it and try different things. right? And you learn through that leadership. So the point I'm trying to make is, I think having a goal where you can relate to the difference you can make in people's life, and achieve something equivalent to that at work. So irrespective of whether you're happy at work or not, right? What it creates is opportunities for entrepreneurship. So what I mean by entrepreneurship, if you know what entrepreneurs are, people that create, create programs inside the corporate world. So I found myself constantly going back because I know that I had these other goals. So I would look for opportunities that are aligned with my work. So for example, security is important in healthcare, right? So understanding security, push yourself to understand security. Then you, let's say machine learning is important to train a model in healthcare. So you look for, how you apply machine learning in your existing work, but with your goal is a different goal, right? So when you have this outside goal, you are driven more than the normal person who is just taking work as work, right? End of the day, you might end up creating something or not, but you will be much happier. And like people will sense that passion and energy in you, and you'll do better. Even if you just stayed in work life, you'll enjoy, you'll do better. And if you really push yourself, then you might come back, you'll learn enough and do something. So this whole the foundation was that 10-year journey. But the important aspect of this is, when I started, COVID was just about getting there, right? So really, even to date, I believe the chronic diseases. So people's, if you look at healthcare by GDP in every country, healthcare is the highest, vertical, right? And if you look at that healthcare cost, it's in the first 5 years of life and last 5 years of life, right? Birth problems in the first 5 years of life, and last 5 years of life is chronic disease like heart disease, cancer, diabetes, right? So the primary goal of the foundation is to increase the quantity and quality of life, right? Um, Especially for those that cannot afford to go to medical facilities. The reality is, even if you can afford to go to medical facilities, as people, it's pain, right? Money can't buy that comfort for you to go to medical facilities. I mean, of course, it can to a certain extent, but over time it cannot. It's still painful. So if you can take care of yourself in your bed at your house. So a good example is, if you're a heart failure patient, all of us will be heart failure patients, right? Meaning, just like any organ, your heart will also fail, right? What you're supposed to do at that time is to check your weight every day, because what that weight increase is telling you is that your heart is not pumping enough and there's fluid accumulation happening in your body, right? If you detect that fast enough and correct it, then you will avoid hospital admission. Today, even in the US, that problem is a $40 billion problem, where people end up admitted because of fluid accumulation. And then about a third of them end up dying as a part of that, because they catch infections as a part of that procedure, right? So simple thing like that, where we can help people, make it easier to take their weight every day. And it's a very simple thing to say. It's a very difficult thing to do. It's sort of like saying wear your mask for COVID, right? It's a very simple thing to say. It's a very difficult thing to do. So the goal of the foundation is to make it part of the people's life. So in other words, just say in the easiest case, it would be like, if I sleep on my bed and get off my bed, my weight should be taken. I should not feel like, it's not about creating a killer app. It's not about the ease of use. It's nothing like that. It's just happening as a part of my life, right? I'm not bothered about it. And then those inputs are processed as machine learning, and I augment a nurse. In UK, there is something called a heart failure nurse. In the rest of the world, it's not there. But if you can augment that lack of heart failure nurse through machine learning model, right, and help people. So there are many examples like that across. Weight is a vitals management. There is symptoms management. There is medication management. diet management, exercise, and stress management. These 6 pillars are fundamental to both health and well-being, right? Whether you're healthy or under a certain condition. So the idea of the foundation is to do whatever we can to move the needle on those 6 pillars, right? That's what it is. Yeah, I know, very long answer, but yeah, that's the goal of it.
That's quite all right. It was a really insightful answer, I think. And I think you had some incredible foresight to understand the impact that this technology could have. And I think, I guess tying into my next question a little bit, in terms of just helping people. So I've heard that you are teaching and introducing high school kids to various technologies like Python, encouraging them to build like apps, creating object detection models, and a variety of other like very intriguing things. So I was wondering, could you elaborate on this a little? Like, what motivates you to take the time out of your very busy day and busy schedule to inspire kids and teach them in such a way?
One is very selfish. I learn from them, right? Because like very simple things, right? So we, just the most recent thing that I was amazed with is just the use of a tool called When to Meet. Like we struggle so much to figure out whose time, when, what day, blah, blah, blah. But somebody just said, hey, just create a When to Meet poll, and that's amazing, right? It saves so much time. You won't believe how much time gets wasted even in corporate life figuring out people's availability. Okay, so that's just one good example, but that's it's not the only thing. Everything from tools to create slides to how they think. See, the biggest advantage that younger kids, school or university, right, is there are no inhibitions. So if you want to be disruptive and you want to be transformative, the biggest challenge we have as experienced individuals is to unlearn what we know, right? We have to unlearn and then relearn things, right? Whereas if you look at kids, all they have to do is learn things. They don't have inhibitions to unlearn things, right? It's just an open slate. So it's very productive, and as I said, it's fun. There's a lot of joy in just working with young kids. That's why I do it.
That was really interesting to hear because I was actually involved with some of the projects with Mr. Vasireddy. So that was an interesting answer to hear. For our next question, I think we can all agree that you are an inspiring and very ambitious person and have achieved a lot of great accomplishments through your professional life and your personal life, which leads me to ask, how do you balance it all? How do you balance your work and your family and personal life and all of your philanthropic pursuits? Because it's obviously a lot to maintain on your busy schedule. So just how do you balance everything?
I think, first of all, balance is a very individual thing. My simplest answer for this is, as I said, have a focus where work doesn't feel like work. So I know that in my life, this is what I want to do, whether I'm successful in doing that or not, right? But that's something that keeps me going. So if I am doing that at work, in life, and I continuously have a sense of, working towards my goal, so then work doesn't feel like work, or in any other home chores doesn't feel like home chores. Or if you're doing something like that, if you're listening to a book that is also towards, that goal, so you can just immerse yourself, right, in that joy, and that's, that there is inherent balance in that. Right? If you're trying to juggle the balance, like if you try to compartmentalize 8 to 5 is this, and then to this, then right. So then it becomes extremely difficult. Then you'll find all kinds of challenges trying to balance, right? Just think of it as that one North Star, that in life you're going and everything you're doing is getting you there, right? So, and then I think the balance, you'll find that balance to be very natural. You won't struggle through that balance.
Thank you so much for that. For our very last question, we just wanted to ask, what advice do you have for all of the young entrepreneurs and philanthropists out there?
So my advice is, there was time when education was super important, right? Meaning going to formal education. So if you think of, decades ago, right, you had to go to a university or a library. Access to books or scholars were at these elite institutions, right? Today, there is, if you're trying to go after, just studying, right? There is no end to it. And it doesn't matter whatever field you work in, engineering, law, medicine, you hardly apply 10 or 20% of what you learn in formal education, right? What I suggest is start having your own goals, your own hypothesis. And it could be, it doesn't need to be philanthropy, or it could be, if you enjoy gaming, do it for gaming's sake, right? Figure out what is needed for that to apply, and what knowledge is needed. Go seek that knowledge. There's plenty on YouTube, right? Go seek that knowledge, apply that knowledge, right? Just like how when you exercise physically, you feel energetic. When you pick a passion like that, you mentally, you'll start feeling energetic when you start doing that, right? So whatever your goal may be, philanthropic or not, just find something like that that is fun, right? And do it. Spare some time for doing it. And then if you do have a goal to do something entrepreneurial, again, it could be social entrepreneurship, it could be for profit, whatever entrepreneurial, right? The best time to do is right after college. Okay. The reason, and many people think that they need to get experience and then they will do something, right? It's a slippery slope. You will get into corporate cushion. You'll start, accepting that as life, and you'll be afraid your opportunity cost grows up. Meaning, you're looking at, okay, I'm making 100,000 here. If I leave here, where will I make my 100,000? What happens to this? You'll start getting into this, and then after that, you'll get married. Then you'll have kids, and then it's kids' education. So the it gets only harder. It doesn't get easier to start something, right? And then there is one more truth is guaranteed, which is basically, if you start doing something very young, right out of college, the worst thing that can happen to you is you'll get an awesome job. Okay, so people think that they have to get a job and stabilize, but actually the reverse is true, right? If you jump in, everybody will appreciate the fact that you tried something on your own. It doesn't matter whether you're successful or not, right? And just remember one thing is, there's only 24 hours in a day, right? So whether you choose to be a janitor or whatever you do, right, you still have those 24 hours, right? So, and I'm not saying, you could absolutely find happiness in being a janitor, right? Because you're cleaning and making someone else feel happy. And there are great entrepreneurs that have formed companies there, right? So it's just that, right? You have to really remember that there's 24 hours, 8 to 10 hours of productive time. And the sooner you make a choice to set a bigger goal for you, the more you will push yourself, the more you will experience, and the more you will learn. And it's a virtuous cycle that you create for yourself. In the end, whether you end up becoming an entrepreneur or philanthropist, it doesn't matter. You've lived a fulfilling life.
Okay, thank you for that. I just wanted to, before we end it, I just wanted to ask you, is there anything else that you would like to add, or any other topic you felt maybe you want to discuss before we wrap up?
No, thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity. I mean, thanks for sharing letting me know what this is about too, right? So that I could infuse the key messages that I wanted to, and hopefully everybody that watches this finds it useful, and at least betters their life one step further.
Yeah. So with that being said, thank you so much for taking your time to come speak to us today. I learned a lot personally from the advice that you gave and all of like the experiences you talked about. Um, so, whether it be like as an entrepreneur or also as a philanthropist, sorry. So we wish you all the best with the REAN Foundation and all of your endeavors in general. And we hope you continue to achieve great things and influence many more people. So, like he said to everyone listening, we hope you found this useful. So yeah, thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you.